Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania has taken some lumps from critics. As of this recording, the new Peyton Reed-directed Marvel movie sits with a failing Rotten Tomatoes score of 47% and a Metacritic score of 48, numbers that are even worse than last year's Marvel debacle, Thor: Love and Thunder, a movie that by my estimation was a no-good, rotten, bad time that treated its main character like a joke and could hardly take the stakes of its own narrative with sincerity. And yes, I know that Thor: Love and Thunder is a silly movie about a Norse space god who wields a magic hammer, but a movie's narrative still needs to carry some weight. It can't be tonally comic for like 95% of the time. There has to be meaning here, and as a result, Thor: Love and Thunder was pretty awful. To misquote Russell Crowe's appearance in that film, "This is no good." It was a movie ravaged by critics, and when I saw similar critically dour reactions to Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, I feared that I was in store for yet another Marvel letdown, another superhero experience that was less than marvelous. Quick aside, I apologize for the shit wordplay, but then again, you clicked on this video, you knew the risks going in here. But after seeing the film for myself, after anticipating disaster due to a critical dissertation on bluster, I have come to a conclusion on Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which for brevity I'm just referring to it as Quantumania from here on out. And that logical conclusion is that Quantumania is yet another Marvel movie, for better or for worse. Like the 30 films and several Disney Plus series preceding it, Quantumania features many of the good and the bad qualities you'd now expect from an MCU project, things that I will explain shortly, and it does this to decent results. Quantumania is overall a solid 2-hour movie, and in order to explain why this is the case, allow me to first describe Quantumania's story. The plot follows Scott Lang, i.e. the titular Ant-Man, played by the perpetually youthful Paul Rudd, as he attempts to acclimate himself in a post-Avengers Endgame world. See, Lang does not really do much heroing these days, and instead is resting on his laurels, like he wrote a book about his experiences, because everybody's gotta write a book these days, and desires to spend more time with his family, like his girlfriend Hope, i.e. the Wasp, his daughter Cassie, and his in-laws in Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne. He wants to live a simple, peaceful life. He's somewhat retired from hero work here. However, Cassie, who is now an older teen that is an advocate for social justice, good kid, believes that her papa ant is wasting his shrinking and growing ant suit by just ignoring the actual injustices in the world, an action, or inaction in this case, that contradicts his own superhero status. And to make matters worse, Hank Pym believes that Scott is wasting his shrink technology and should not just be experiencing his life on cruise control. And thus, behind Lang's back, Hank and Cassie work on a device that would map the quantum realm, i.e. a secret world that exists below our real one that can only be traversed to by shrinking, which is cool. But of course, things inevitably go wrong, because you know, this is a movie and things generally have to go awry in order for the plot to progress, because that's just storytelling. Thank you for indulging my TED Talk. During a demonstration of the Quantum of Solace technology, a signal from the quantum realm pings back and forces the device to go haywire, which transports Scott, Hope, Cassie, Hank, and Janet to the quantum realm, a place that they quickly learn, though of course Janet lived in the quantum realm for 30 years, so she already knows all about the quantum realm, but chose not to tell the others, is the home to various monstrous creatures and cognizant intelligent beings that are all ruled by an authoritarian that we know to be Kang the Conqueror. And from there, Scott and crew try to find a way to return home, all while evading Kang. Quantumania's story is pretty good. It throws our hero Ant-Man, a man that is mostly known for smaller stakes narratives, please again forgive my wordplay transgressions, and thrusts him into a grand fantastical adventure where he must confront a foe that is way out of his league, which is just tough for our Ant-Man. After all, throughout all the Ant-Man movies, Scott Lang has shown himself to be selfish at times, often contradicting his own superhero status and his verbally expressed desire to quote-unquote look out for the little guy. And now that Scott has been thrown into the quantum realm, his whole sense of self and ideals come into conflict with his self-centered reality, because in the quantum realm, Scott must choose between protecting his family or helping save the quantum realm's innocent populace from a multiversal threat that is way more powerful than him. It's an interesting conundrum. However, this thematic through line is not enough to allow Quantumania to be anything above decent, because while Lang Kang's narrative is engaging, and that Jonathan Majors Kang is a terrific, intimidating, and formidable antagonist that makes our hero question his values, the fact of the matter is that Quantumania is still standard Marvel Cinematic Universe fare. Yes, even though this movie is set in a hidden world where buildings are alive and some of the denizens are goo creatures or men made out of broccoli, no relation, the movie still adheres to the Marvel formula. There's an over-reliance on CGI, which is especially true seeing as most of the movie takes place in a fictional secret realm, and the fact that a lot of the characters aren't human. Some of that aforementioned CG looks terrible, especially MODOK, a man who just looks like an actor's face being stretched under a magnifying glass. The movie's main protagonist is focused on at the expense of some of the other characters, though in most Marvel movies it's the villain that gets neglected, whereas in Quantumania it's Hope, i.e. the Wasp, that gets the narrative shorter straw here. Like, even Hope's mother, Janet, has more of a narrative impact due to her past connection with the quantum realm and Kang. The comedic banter is mostly the same type of self-aware, sometimes irreverent humor. The film is tonally similar to most other Marvel movies in that it's light but still takes its own narrative seriously, though maybe that's not an overall awful thing given that I just criticized the shit out of Thor: Love and Thunder's comparatively lighter tone. It has a lot of extraneous call-outs and references to other MCU projects, especially ones that now deal with the in vogue multiversal concept, and the movie's pacing and three-act structure culminating in an epic high-stakes battle is similar to other MCU fare. And admittedly, yes, many of these things are not inherently bad. While yes, some of the CG isn't very good, and Hope is more of a supporting character than the movie's title suggests. After all, it name-checks the Wasp, yet she doesn't really have that much of an interesting narrative or character growth in this movie. Quantumania's lead is engaging. The father-daughter drama between Lang and an aspiringly heroic yet inexperienced Cassie establishes an emotional connection with the audience, and the self-aware humor can be funny, because of course the film realizes how inherently silly it is. Because, you know, it has a man made out of broccoli, for fuck's sake. And truly, all of these storytelling ideas can be good. Hell, Quantumania even does a few things better than most other Marvel movies. It actually has a quality antagonist, and its final culminating third-act battle sequence feels more earned compared to other Marvel movies. It has a lot of good things going for it, and with that, there's a reason as to why the Marvel movie formula exists, and that reason is because it works and it creates overall enjoyable experiences. It makes fun films. But still, I cannot shake the feeling that Quantumania does not differentiate itself all that much from other MCU fare. It just adheres to the overall formula, and that's a problem now that we are 31 films and several TV shows into this expansive continuity, because honestly, we have seen this formula play out so many times before. We've watched films and stories with the same tone, pacing, comedic banter, and structure play out so many times, meaning that in order for a Marvel movie to be good these days, that said movie has to do something noteworthy to stand out. Especially now after Marvel's Rocky Phase 4, which had mixed results and had a bit too many movies and TV shows, to the point that the continuity in the overarching narrative in these films and TV shows felt unfocused, aside from how all the characters are trying to figure out their lives post-Avengers Endgame, and how some are in the grieving process, which has its merit and was interesting, but overall Phase 4 was iffy, because quality-wise, Phase 4 was pretty inconsistent. While sure, Phase 4 dabbled a bit in other tones and genres, like Multiverse of Madness had horror elements, WandaVision was a play on classic sitcoms, and Black Widow was a James Bond-style espionage thriller, many of Phase 4 shows and movies took a few thematic and narrative risks, all while sticking to Marvel's formula, but had varying degrees of success. It had good ideas with good execution, good ideas with bad execution, and movies like Thor: Love and Thunder, which was a bad idea with bad execution. Though, does that even make sense? Because if a bad idea has bad execution, does that mean it was truly 100% bad? Because wouldn't two negatives make a positive? I mean, I'm just spitballing here, so maybe what I mean is Thor: Love and Thunder was a bad idea with good execution. Because as far as bad ideas go, it was executed flawlessly. I don't know, I'm just trying to figure this shit out. I feel drunk. But what I'm trying to say is that Phase 4 overall lacked direction. It lacked much overarching narrative cohesion, and with Quantumania, i.e. the start of Marvel's Phase 5, I was hoping for something new and revelatory. Something that would creatively jumpstart the MCU again by taking some creative risk by dipping its toes into other genres, like some of Phase 4's better and more respectable projects. And while Quantumania does move along the overarching narrative of the MCU and connects its embracement of a multiversal concept concept with an actual multiversal villain, the movie does not reinvent the Marvel wheel, unless of course that wheel is cheese. It's really average Marvel fare that does not go outside its comfort zone, where some recent MCU projects had some stylistic deviations that allowed those said projects to stand out, see the awesome Miss Marvel. Quantumania is just a baseline Marvel production, meaning that it is the embodiment of fine. It has its fun and merits, but doesn't really go beyond that. Like all typical Marvel experiences, it's generally decent, but nothing that rocks the boat too much. And in that regard, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is just a middle-of-the-road Marvel film, for better or for worse. And with that, that was the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like rating, share, subscribe, ring the bell, and leave a comment telling me what you think of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Also, please consider checking out my Patreon page. $1 a month gets you onto this credit sequence, and $5 a month allows you to start making quick review requests. The link to my Patreon is in the description. And speaking of Patreon, I just want to thank my patrons, particularly my high tier ones in Samantha Devlin, Mom, and Morgan. Thank you so much for supporting what I do. Love y'all.